May this video be the flame that warms your heart, illuminating your path with the light of love and acceptance.
Meditation is a phenomenal empowerment that you can do whatever is needed in the world, whatever, I mean that, and still remain untouched by the process of activities that we need to conduct in the world. If you sit here, your body is here, your mind is there, who you are is little away. This is the end of suffering, and this is meditativeness. Namaskaram. Everybody is suddenly, people who had never meditated in their lives, never even considered that possibility, are now suddenly talking about meditation, the need to meditate, wanting to meditate. Let us examine this meditation, what this is. First of all, what does the word meditation mean? The English word meditation doesn't really mean anything, in the sense, it doesn't say anything specific. If anybody sits normally with their eyes closed, it's assumed they must be meditating. One can sit with their eyes closed and do many things. You can do japa, tapa, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, shunya, samyama, or you might have just mastered the art of sleeping in vertical postures. So the word meditation in English language doesn't specify anything. Generally we assume, or generally people assume that meditation means dhyana. In Tamil Nadu it's dhyanam, if you go little north it's dhyana, if you go really up north it's dhyan. If you go further up it becomes chan, if you go little more east it becomes zen. Same thing. So, what is this dimension that we are trying to describe with this word meditation? One fundamental thing that we need to understand is, you cannot do meditation because meditation is a quality. A quality is a consequence of a certain process. You can initiate a process, you can conduct a process. You cannot conduct a quality. Quality is just a consequence. It is like you want flowers in your garden. You don't sit there and do flower meditation. You know what happened to the flower people If you want flowers in your garden, you don't have to think flowers. You have to think soil, manure, water, sunlight. If you conduct this process of these ingredients properly, flower and fruit is a consequence. But today, the world has become so goal-oriented. Because they're so goal-oriented, they are not interested in the soil, definitely not interested in the manure and all the other things, but they want flowers and fruit. If you want flowers without soil, manure, water and sunlight, well, you will have to settle for plastic flowers. Plastic flowers are very wonderful. Those who think of utility, it serves you in many different ways. It comes with a 5-year guarantee. Flowers are a nuisance. If you keep flowers in your house, you have to look at them at least 5 times in a day, what's happening, are they thriving well or not. But if you keep plastic flowers in your home, 5 years guarantee, unlike your life. So essentially, the dimension and the process that you're referring to as meditation is very life-oriented. When I say life-oriented, today largely you're material-oriented or at the most mind-oriented, maybe emotion-oriented or physical body, which is a material again. Largely life has become like this. People's idea of life is, if someone says, "my life," you're supposed to understand they're talking about their job. They're talking about the economic condition in the country or in the world, about their car, maybe about their dog, sometimes about their husbands or wives. It could be anything. But the only thing that's truly life is what is throbbing in this. This is life. The rest are arrangements that we have made, hoping that these arrangements will allow us to enhance our life. Whether it's education, career, relationships, marriage, children, wealth, whatever. All these things one is after only in the hope that it will enhance our life. As you know, most people, instead of enhancing their life, largely get entangled with these accessories. Accessories have become larger than the life process. Well, I think in a very cruel way. The virus is bringing focus on the life. You suddenly understand your expensive home has become a prison. Your expensive car is as good as junk because you can't drive it, at least for some time. So now naturally a whole lot of people are asking all over the world, how to meditate, what should I do? As I said, you cannot meditate, but you can become meditative because it's a quality. If one cultivates their body, mind, emotion and energies to a certain level of maturity, you will be naturally meditative 24 hours of the day. Meditation is not an impairment that if you're meditative, you have to close your eyes and be limited to one place. Meditation is a phenomenal empowerment that you can do whatever is needed in the world. Whatever, I mean that. Whatever is needed in the given situation and still remain untouched by the process of activities that we need to conduct in the world. This empowerment or without this empowerment, in fact, a human being is crippled because if what you have to think, feel, understand and act in the world is going to rub off on you in such a big way, naturally you will hesitate to do what is needed. Naturally you will avoid doing things that need to be done. In a way, the moment you are in a state where your own activity and the activity of the world around you and the activity of your mind and your emotion, once they are impacting you every moment of your life, then in some way you will cripple yourself because naturally you would want to keep the scale of your life very limited because activity, thought, emotion, involvement with life can cause enormous amount of suffering. Once there is fear of suffering, knowingly or unknowingly, you will limit the scope and possibilities of your life. Meditation means just this, in a very simple way if we have to put it. If you sit here, your body is here, your mind is there, who you are is little away from these two dimensions of physical body and mental accumulations. These two accumulations of body and mind, if a little space arises between you and this is the end of suffering. And this is meditativeness. Isha Kriya is an extremely simple process but a powerful tool. These three ingredients, your breath, your thought and your awareness, in the right combination, if you use them, your ability to use the mind and the body is so greatly enhanced that you almost look superhuman for somebody else. But I'm telling you, this is human. This is not about being superhuman. This is about realizing being human is super. Our prejudices, if you learn to use it, then this will clearly tell us what is what, because this is the most competent machine that's out here.
Yes, and yet I'm trying to imagine a world where we would all be Sadhgurus, right? Imagine…
You're talking about a very competitive world for me.
It's your word. So, I chose at one point in my life not to become neither a priest or a guru or a philosopher, but a scientist, and then to use that as a medical doctor. And I'm still happy with that choice because I do think, and I believe you will agree, that the scientific knowledge and the technology and modern medicine has really incredibly improved our quality of life and our life expectancy, and that's very important to appreciate. So I am very happy that there are these scientists and that we have the technological advances, but at the same time I think we should try to find some and reconnect to the spirituality or the pure experience, as you say. Would you agree with that, that it's this kind of balance?
See, it is like this, if you take a motorcycle mechanic, he's very good with the motorcycles, let's say. But now you ask him to fix a computer, well, he can use his screwdriver and open the cover. Beyond that, he doesn't know a thing about it, all right? This is just like this. Objective sciences are like this. It is always 1 + 1 is 2. That's the only way objectivity can work. You cannot say 1 + 1 is 11 also, forget about a million, all right? You cannot say that because this is the nature of objectivity. And our objectivity is coming from our intellectual process. Intellectual process, as again I said already, it's coming from memory. So memory cannot be fudged. If you fudge the memory, it's a mess. I remember this is 1 and this is 1. And now I put these two things together and say this is 2. Now this has a memory basis. If I fudge this, then my intellect becomes useless, all right? So intellect is handling one aspect of our life, which essentially we call it as self-preservation. For our self-preservation, our intellect is vital, without it we cannot function. Right now, all the things that you said, it has improved our life expectancy, it enhanced our life in so many ways. No, it has not enhanced the quality of our life at all. It has only enhanced the comfort and convenience levels in the world and definitely life expectancy. All this is definitely self-preservation, isn't it? It's survival process. So when it comes to self-preservation, our intellect is vital. Without this one functioning, you cannot survive in this world. All the five senses are functioning, they are feeding the data into your intellect and from there you're using it. How efficiently you use it will determine how efficiently you survive. So your life expectancy enhanced means your efficiency of survival has increased, that's all it is. So you are more healthy than what people were in the past, I don't think so, but suppose we are, it simply means your survival process is little more efficient. So, leaving the survival process, now you're talking about consciousness. Consciousness means… see, the English word consciousness is very loosely used. If you say somebody is in anesthesia, if they come back, you say, oh, he's come back to his consciousness. No, he's conscious because there are no alternate words, we use the same words. Language is a different aspect. Language is also a product of our intellect, so it can only talk in opposites. Without polarities, there is no language. Without polarities, your intellect cannot function. But when you talk about consciousness, you are not talking about two polarities. There is no A consciousness and B consciousness. There is no positive consciousness and negative consciousness, there's just one. So, what doesn't have a polarity cannot be dissected with your intellect. Intellect is a sharp instrument, it can only dissect, it cannot absorb something. See, if you are using your intellect upon something, if you ask any human being, do you want your intellect sharp or blunt? They will say, I want it sharp. Why? Because it's a cutting instrument. If your cutting instrument, if your knife is not sharp, what is the use of such a knife? So now you want to stitch your clothes, but you try to stitch that also with your knife, then all you have is tatters. That is showing almost everybody is wearing tatters around the world today. You see, everybody's pants are torn. I don't know, you are… I'm not seeing the whole of you.
That's very good.
If you are blue denim, say it'll be torn. So, you're using your intellect to handle a subjective dimension of life. That's never going to happen, simply because you're using a telescope to look at the virus, it's not going to work.
Okay.
So Stephen, while you're here thinking about it, I thought I'll bring in a relevant point because you have remarked in some of your lectures that we made a historical mistake by calling consciousness as a binary term, right? Yes or no. And then with your experiments and also your attempts to recover patients in coma, with the instruments that you've had, now you've recorded at least 4 or 5 distinct states of consciousness, or wakefulness, you want to call that. The Sadhguru is saying consciousness is one. There is no polarity to it. So how do you reconcile these? So again, the term comes back to consciousness term. Just call it wakefulness or whatever. You are in all these guideline committees. You're like the president of many of these committees. Can we even change that as just wakefulness and leave it there? Because it's so…
So thank you for that question, Bala. We are definitely struggling, and I think we have no definition of consciousness that we all agree upon. What we try to work on are somehow practical measures that, well, you and I as clinicians, when we say the patient is unconscious, what do we mean? What is the language we speak? And we will there reduce this complexity to, first of all, wakefulness, the first dimension, and that's what you see and what we all experience when we fall asleep. When you make them fall asleep during anesthesia, they somehow seem to lose awareness of their environment and then their self. During sleep, there is already this notorious exception when we dream, and I think that's fascinating. And there's lucid dreaming and illustrating the challenge for us as observers, saying meaningful things about awareness in another person. And then these patients, as you say, in coma, who can no longer be awakened, and that's simply looked at from the outside as looking at eye-opening. They will never open the eyes even when we stimulate them, and then observing their behavior, which is then reduced to reflexes. But it's true that when you think about it, it's frustrating, and that is exactly why I started this research, because I was not satisfied with how, as a clinician, I could say meaningful things about consciousness, the mind, subjectivity, while the only thing I'm doing at the bedside is making inferences based on some motor activity, and the absence of proof is there, not always proof of the absence. So to me, it seemed a historical error that we had this black and white view, that the patients we see with severe brain damage were or conscious or not. And now we see all these more nuanced states, like you can be more or less awake, you can be more or less awake, and we describe these very strange conditions where patients survive, eyes open but completely unaware, that we called vegetative state. We now call them unresponsive wakefulness, and then some of these are minimally conscious, which again is very frustrating because you can't communicate with them, but you know that sometimes they have, very probably, when we look with these brain imaging techniques, functioning brain, and hence a functioning mind that can perceive emotions, including pain. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more precise about what we consider as awareness of the environment, of the self, and how we can link it to brain networks, which is what we try to do with this global neuronal workspace in the front and the back, and trying to capture it by all possible means to help clinicians reduce the uncertainty and have prognostic value. But it's still a tremendous challenge to go from there, and they're still, I think, descriptive, and they have a big practical value, but I am not satisfied in terms of the explanatory power, because they're truly to explain how we're having this wonderful discussion, and I'm thinking that I know for sure some things in my mind now, but how this happens to me is still a big challenge. And as you know, we also listened to patients who had a coma, and we thought they were fully unconscious, but afterwards they tell us they had these wonderful experiences called near-death experiences. Very, very intense, very, very positive, often, but not always, seeing themselves from the outside, this notion of light. And for some, this is proof of life after death. I think it's a challenge because death is still a big, big barrier for science to study. But all of that somehow makes me more humble and look at everything with a little bit more of the amazement from, well, despite all my theoretical knowledge, I'm not able to explain this. And will we ever? Well, there to me, it seems very interesting that the scientific community links to this community of what I would call the athletes of the mind, right? And that's also why I myself try to do meditation, so that I maybe can experience this a little bit better. And maybe we can compare it, Bala and Sadhguru, to my initial area of research was sleep and dreaming. And I dream a lot. And then to me it's easier to connect. But my supervisor at the time very rarely remembered his dreams. And so his approach was very different. And so imagine that I would have no dream, never. How could I, even with the best possible theoretical knowledge, understand dreams? it's, I think, important that we have the experience and the memory, as Sadhguru said, to really get to an understanding. Or imagine I would be a scientist looking at color vision, but me myself would only see in black and white. So even the most perfect understanding of color from a theoretical perspective in this colorblind scientist, wouldn't it be different the day I would truly see in color? So that's the kind of frustration I have when talking with big experts who have, I don't know how many 10,000s of hours of meditation, and I know you're a very expert meditation yourself, and I'm just this little athlete, right? Trying to understand what you mean when you're talking about all these different states and nuances. And so you're right, I see consciousness not even less black or white or on this gray scale, but rather all the colors of the rainbow. And it's so multidimensional that it's very difficult for us to collapse it, to reduce it, and to grasp the holiness of the experience.
If I can say something, can I?
Sure, sir.
See, Stephen, as we sit here, this is my body, that is your body, distinctly established. Right now, it is 100% like this. I don't know what you're drinking, I can't see, but whatever you're drinking, what's in the cup is not you. The moment you drink it, after some time it becomes you. It's happening right now. So, though what you think is your body and what I think is my body is just a piece of this planet, right now it is distinctly clear, this is my body, that is your body, 100%. This is my mind and that is your mind, these are my emotions and those are your emotions, these are my experiences, those are your experiences. But there is no such thing as my consciousness and your consciousness. This is a living consciousness. We blew our own bubble. I'm sure you have that little wonderful boy who came on the screen, I'm sure he's blowing soap bubbles at you sometime. So, if you blow a soap bubble, this is my bubble, that's your bubble. Poop, it went. Then there is no such thing as my bubble and your bubble, there is no such thing as my air and your air. Consciousness is just like this. Right now you have blown your bubble, I have blown my bubble. This is me, that is you. But when this goes poop, there is no such thing as my consciousness and your consciousness. It is just that we are holding a certain amount of, if you want to call it as consciousness, I would prefer to call it as life. Because the word consciousness, as you are speaking, I'm seeing that even last time when we spoke to all Bala's friends, what I see is wakefulness and consciousness, there is no clear distinction in medical terminology. See, everything that you do with your anesthesia has nothing to do with consciousness. It has something to do with body and various functions of the body. You're shutting down certain aspects of the bodily functions. One of them is transmission of pain, which is the main interest when somebody is going to surgery. You don't want to stop their heart, you don't want to stop their brain, you would like to see the transmission of pain stops. Whatever is being cut, whatever damage or fixing is happening, whatever parts of the body may be being removed, what is not vital may be being pulled out, all that is happening. Only transmission of pain is not happening. This has got nothing to do with losing consciousness and gaining consciousness, there's no such thing. So we're using the word wakefulness and consciousness in a little different way. And not only that, especially not just in medical terminology, generally in English language, there is no distinction between somebody is unconscious and he became conscious and consciousness as a larger possibility. So, my body, my intelligence, my mind, my memory, your memory, my experiences, your experience, all different. But there is no such thing as my consciousness and your consciousness. It is just that it is only the human creature on this planet who has the neurological capability and sophistication of mechanism that if they allow it, they can access this dimension of consciousness. No other creature is really capable of accessing it. This doesn't mean there is no consciousness in them. Without that, the life process wouldn't happen. There is There is consciousness even where there is no body, all right? Only thing is, you need a certain sophisticated instrument to access that, which is the human mechanism. This is why we consider being human is a great privilege, because you have access to dimensions beyond your physical boundaries. That is the fundamental significance of being human. So, let us not misunderstand the instrument and what we see. If you take a telescope and see, you saw another galaxy, but the galaxy is not produced by the telescope. The galaxy is there. The telescope only gave you an access. Similarly, your body, your brain, whatever, I don't want to identify different things, from your hair to your toes, everything is body as far as I'm concerned, including your brain. It is just another dimension of the body. So this body, if we keep it in a certain way, if we do not contaminate it with too many ideas, philosophies, identities, if you keep it in a certain level of openness, this will become an access point to what we are referring to as consciousness or the basis of the life that we are, in a way. So somebody can call it consciousness, somebody can call it a being, somebody says this is God. Well, we can use as much vocabulary as you want. Essentially, we are trying to put a meaning on something which cannot be defined, which has no meaning. Meaning is a consequence of human psychological process. Psychological process is a consequence of accumulated memory. So you cannot slap one meaning from your mind upon a limitless possibility which is the very basis of our existence. So this is what is the fundamental mistake, that we are trying to take a piece of our psychological process and trying to understand what is consciousness. Consciousness is not something that you can understand. Understand means there must be a meaning. There is no meaning to it, there is no meaning to the existence. It's just a tremendous phenomena, but you can experience it. You have the necessary instruments to experience it, not the instruments in your lab. You as a person, you have the necessary instrument to experience this. Will you allow it or not, is the only question. As I said in the beginning, it all depends on how you're identified. If your identifications are limited, you have lost the ability to experience it. If your identity is, not identified with anything, you kept yourself loose like that, then there is a possibility of experiencing it. A whole lot of people under drug-induced conditions, they are claiming they experience many things. I'm not questioning that at all, it's very much possible, because one thing that I have seen happening to people under the influence of alcohol or drug is, they've lost their sense of identity. What they think they are usually is not there in them, they've become little boundaryless. Because of that, they might have accessed a certain dimension, but will that make them competent to access it whenever they want? No, 100% not. In fact, they may lose their faculties because they forced it upon, chemically forced something to happen, so that may damage the instrument for good and you may not be able to experience anything beyond a certain point.
Can I ask you two questions?
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned this instrument that permits us to access this, whatever we call it, consciousness, intelligence, but you say it's for humans. So what do you think about animals and how they perceive the world? And then the second question is this terribly challenging one. If you say that somehow, and you make the comparison with the bubble and that there is no such thing as your consciousness, my consciousness, it could be an illusion. So how do we somehow deal with, well, what was there before you were born and what will there be when you're dead? So these two are still burning questions about animals and the before and after this living.
See, when it comes to animals, an animal is programmed in such a way that largely its life is fixed around its survival process. Let's say, for any creature for that matter, their stomach is full, their life is settled, they just sit there happily. But that's not the nature of the human being. Stomach is empty, only one problem, stomach is full, 100 problems. This is the nature of the human being. because survival is not the end game for us. Only when survival is taken care of, what is human kicks in. Till then, we are also just one more creature. When we are absolutely hungry and survival is in question, we are like any other creature. Human beings fight like any other creatures when survival is in question. Only when those things are taken care of, other dimensions of being human become a possibility. So survival is not the end game for us, it is the beginning for us. It is the way of life. But for all other creatures, survival is the end game for us. But even among them, certain creatures are far more capable of accessing or at least being sensitive. I wouldn't say accessing, they're little more sensitive to consciousness. Wherever there is consciousness, certain creatures behave in a certain way. In India, in the yogic culture, in the Indian mysticism, everywhere you see there will be a cobra, always. Simply because we have always seen wherever there is a little bit of, access to consciousness, these creatures somehow sense it and they arrive. What makes them sense it? One thing I'm guessing, this is not a certain science for me, I'm just guessing because they're stone deaf. I think they're super alert and in some other sense, they're very, very alert. This is a fact, this has been checked by a few people. See, for example, a cobra in southern India, it has no ears at all, no hearing mechanism, so it has got the whole body to the ground and literally ear to the ground, So, if there is going to be an earthquake in California, which is literally 12 hours away, that means almost on the opposite side of the planet, if there's going to be an earthquake in the next 2 days or 3 days, this cobra will start behaving in a certain way. If you observe it carefully, if you have mastered that observation sufficiently, you can clearly tell that there is going to be an earthquake in approximately this kind of latitude. There are people who can do that. By simply observing the serpent, how it behaves, they say, there is going to be this kind of movement in some part of the planet. So, because any littlest, even the minutest vibrations in the planet, it is able to sense. So because of this, it has a certain awareness or rather sensitivity to certain vibrations. Probably when somebody accesses what we are referring to as consciousness, the other vibrations which are normally everybody's throwing out on a day-to-day basis, their physical stuff, their psychological stuff, probably that becomes minimal. Lack of that reverberation is something that a cobra senses. If you become very meditative, well, it won't happen in Belgium because there are no cobras there, but if you are in India, if you become very meditative, you sit in a forest and become meditative, cobras will gather in front of you. They will come and sit there as if they're waiting for you. This is my personal experience any number of times, and this will be vouched for by any number of yogis in the tradition always, because they're able to sense that lack of vibration in the person. When the vibrations become very minimal or very fine, somehow they're drawn to that. I feel, for a variety of reasons, because in my experience, I don't want to go into the detail now, but in my experience, all venomous creatures, those which create venom in their system, all of them are able to sense this. Probably, I'm just doing guesswork here, it's just guesswork. See, some creature generates venom within itself as an evolutionary process, probably because in some way his physical features and things are such that without a deadly venom, he wouldn't have survived. He is constantly threatened. So, because he's feeling so threatened, it's also true in human beings. Those who are feeling always threatened, they will carry a lot of venom within themselves. So looking at human behavior, I'm just guessing, maybe in the evolutionary process, because they don't have limbs, let us say the snakes don't have limbs, they don't have the same capabilities that other creatures have, so they might have developed venom over a period of time, because otherwise they wouldn't have survived, otherwise they wouldn't have got food to eat, everything around them moves faster, but still they manage to hunt and live only because of the venom that they carry. All venomous creatures, I've noticed this with bees, the honey bees, the way they behave around me, many times I've noticed is very strange. In the beginning when it happened, I couldn't believe how these insects seem to be sensing something which nobody else, human beings don't know most of the time, but they're able to see it. I've generally noticed this with all venomous creatures, because to generate that venom, there is some special process going on within them. From what I hear from other scientists and people who are working in the field, they're saying venom is one of the most complex proteins that are produced on the planet, and today for various neurological ailments, the experiments are going on how venom could be a solution in the future, because in my personal experience, consuming venom has done miracles to me in terms of rejuvenating my body and doing things with myself in so many different ways. If you are… I don't know if you and Bala are not aware of this, there are certain type of yogis who always carry these mountain scorpions, which are almost like 9 inches long, in a box. Once in a way, they will decide when, they will take a sting from the scorpion, your whole neurological system will jangle, it'll go for 24 hours to 48 hours. It won't let you sleep, it will just keep you up. And between pain and pleasure, there is very little distinction. Once the neurological system gets tangled, like jangled in a certain way, you can make it into pain, you can make it into pleasure consciously. So they will cry, they will laugh, they will cry, they will laugh, they will go through this for whole 24 to 48 hours, because they're using the venom to just shake up the whole neurological system. So having said that, somewhere certain creatures have little more access to these things. They may not have access to consciousness, but where there is access to consciousness, they're able to sense that. In my understanding, or I would rather say my presumption, is that they're able to mark out those creatures or those bodies who are least amount of reverberations in them. Where there is least amount of reverberation is like a little bit of a vacuum for them, so they're drawn towards that, and at the same time they will not harm that, that kind of reverberation, because they feel very passive. Like, I don't know, right now in the video as I was watching it, there is a video where I'm holding a king cobra, not by the head, but in the body. It is not a pet cobra or something. We've just caught it 2-3 days before that is being filmed there. And king cobra, if it bites you, you have 6 to 8 minutes to live, that's it. It has enough venom to kill an elephant, but it will not bite. It all depends. If you show a little anxiety, it'll bite you. If you are just absolutely calm, it will not touch you, because it's going by the reverb that you generate. So, having said that, this consciousness as a dimension, let's call it a dimension, let's not call it as an experience of wakefulness and sleep, different levels of wakefulness. Well, even when you're awake, not everybody is awake to the same extent, isn't it? Suppose you're teaching in a university, right? Do you find all the students awake at to the same level?
When I teach, yes, hyper vigilant.
He actually uses that analogy in his lectures.
What?
He goes to a lecture and he uses that analogy where he picks his participants in a lecture and he analyzes and tells them, you're not this much awake and you're this much awake and alert to defend his own theories.
So, no two human beings are awake to the same extent. So this whole dimension, if we change the terminology a little bit, probably it will fall into a little better place of understanding, maybe not entirely, but little better. That is, right now when we talk about anesthesia or even coma for that matter, they may be very similar, I don't know medically how you differentiate between the two. Essentially, bodily functions have dropped step by step. In one person, a certain number of functions might have dropped, in another person it might have dropped further. And I would take it further, even what you call as death is just further drop in the bodily functions. So whether it is death, coma, anesthesia, in my understanding and my experience of things, they are not very different. It is just different levels of profoundness of the same thing. When you become completely unawake, that means you're dead. You're a little bit awake means you're in coma. You're a little more awake means you're under the influence of anesthesia. Little more awake means you just had a drink.
In your experience, but you have not yet died.
Let's not go into that now. We'll go into it some other day because are you in Brussels?
Yes, close to Brussels.
Okay, so unless you serve me French fries, I'm not going to talk all those things to you right now.
I will offer you French fries and Belgian chocolate.
Well, about when you said before being born and after the death process has happened,
Be a multiplier of love and knowledge. Share this video with those you love, and together, let's spread light throughout the world.